Hello and welcome to A Light in the Dark live on Faith FM. How exciting is this? This is the first episode we've done as a live show, and it's really exciting. Peter, I don't know about you.
This is the first time you and I have done a live show.
That's true, yes.
That's fantastic.
I guess it's not the first time A Light in the Dark has been a live show.
Of course, that's right.
Had that before when you were doing the show a little while back with Jason Cook down in Tasmania.
Yeah. Shout out to Jason if you're listening.
That's right. Yeah. We love Jason and all the great work the Tassie Encounters guys do down there. And it's just exciting to be doing this live. And because of that, we can say to our listeners, you are more than welcome to text in, let us know
Absolutely.
Your thoughts during the show, and we can even respond to you if you've got a question. The show number we're using is 0488 808 31. So that's just, if you're in the know, that's the general Faith FM station number. So you can text in once again on 0488 808 31. Jason, now I've got Jason.
I've got Jason Cook in your head.
That's right. Peter, how's life been going for you at the moment?
Very good. Very busy, actually, at the moment. Thank you, Brad. It is funny because, like, you and I have we've recorded a number of shows, but we haven't done live. So it is nice. We like live. We love being live. But right now, yes, I've been pretty busy sharing a series that I do on apologetics called Is God for Real?
Okay.
Is God for real, and does it really matter?
Yep.
What difference does it make? And so we've been running that in two locations, actually in Warburton, Victoria, and at Wandon North, which is in the Yarra Valley in Victoria. And they are ongoing at the moment. So tomorrow evening, that'll just be Friday, the 4th of August, I will be presenting at Warburton at 7 p.m. At the Redwood Centre there, Who is the Antichrist?
Ooh.
And the Temple and Jerusalem. So those two topics will be presented on Friday night, 7 p.m. at the Redwood Centre, which is 3505 Warburton Highway. And then on Saturday night, I will be presenting at the Wandon Senior Citizens Hall, 401 Warburton Highway. And that program will be Did We Really Evolve and Why So Much Suffering? That's at 6 p.m. From 6 p.m. at Yarra Valley, 7 p.m. at Warburton. But yeah, it's been a pretty busy couple of weeks, but I enjoy doing that. It's good.
Yeah, absolutely. And for those who may be listening to a repeat version or a podcast version in the future, those dates are, so tomorrow at Warburton is going to be Friday the 4th of August 2023.
And then Saturday the 5th.
Saturday the 5th of August. Yep, there we go. So just so we don't disappoint anyone, they're listening. Oh, yeah,
they're turning up 3 weeks later.
That's right.
That wouldn't be good.
No, that sounds very interesting. I'd love to be there and learn more about those things.
Well, feel free to come along if you're able.
Yeah. Okay, so today on the show, what we're actually going to be talking about is something kind of interesting, I think. Yeah. And that is the place of Israel in Bible prophecy.
Yeah.
And I know, like, to a lot of people today, conversations about Israel, they go in 2 or 3 different directions.
Sure.
One is basically Israel, I don't care about Israel, whatever. One is, Israel, they're pretty nasty, those guys, oppressing the Palestinians.
Right.
And, it's a genocide and it's apartheid and et cetera, et cetera. And then the third is often, no, we need to stand with Israel.
Sure.
Israel is the
chosen of God.
The chosen of God in the Middle East, and we need to do anything we can to support Israel no matter what. And I saw the other day that the American Congress passed a resolution, and it's passed through the Senate as well, so it's just waiting for the president to sign it now. And this particular resolution says, and this will be passed into law, it is the sense of Congress that 1, the state of Israel is not a racist or apartheid state. 2, Congress rejects all forms of anti-Semitism and xenophobia. And 3, the United States will always be a staunch partner and supporter of Israel. Yeah, and they passed this like as a law, basically.
Right. Yep.
That, the United States will always be a staunch supporter of Israel. And so you kind of, I mean, I don't know about you, but that's kind of the three different areas I
think that's about
any
right.
conversation about Israel.
I suppose the way I would sum that up is some people say, what's wrong with those people? Because the Palestinians and the Israelites are always fighting.
Yeah, for sure.
And then, like you say, there are people who are very distinctly on the Palestinian side, and then others who are very distinctly on the Israeli side. And so what we want to do is find out, what does the Bible say about all of this? Mm-hmm. And the great thing about the Bible is it covers such a broad range of topics. I mean, anything in life, pretty much.
Of course. Yeah.
Right? Anything in life, anything in this world, the Bible's got something to say about it. And but particularly in this area, it's interesting. One of the things I wanted to start off with was in December of 2017, then President Donald Trump made an announcement on the 6th of December 2017. US President Donald Trump recognises Jerusalem as the capital of Israel.
Didn't they name like a suburb in Jerusalem after him?
I really don't. Maybe
like
that's true. I don't know. But they were probably, the Israelis were pretty happy about that. Yeah. But why was that such a ripple? I mean, for most people living outside of the States or outside of Israel, we probably think, well, yeah, isn't Jerusalem, the capital of Israel anyway?
And of course, it's Tel Aviv, isn't it?
Well, precisely. Well, so here's the deal. Why was that such big news? A number of previous presidents had said that they would do that once they got in office and never had.
Yep.
But Trump was the first to say, yes, we're formally recognising Israel. Of course, that sent ripples through the political machinery because Jerusalem is divided. The Palestinians control part of it and the Israelis control part of it. And, of course, the Temple Mount is dominated by the Dome of the Rock, which is an Islamic shrine. Yep. And, of course, if the Jews were actually controlling the Temple Mount, I'm sure they'd rebuild the temple again or something.
Which would cause all sorts of problems.
Correct. And of course, all of this comes into question. When we look at at Israel as a state in the Middle East today, what I want to ask is the modern state of Israel still God's blessed nation? We can read about that in the Old Testament. We're going to read about it. Is the modern state of Israel still God's blessed nation? Do the promises made to Israel in the Old Testament apply to literal Israel in the Middle East today? Will the Temple of Jerusalem be rebuilt? There's been a couple of them there previously already.
Yep.
Right now, as we've said, it's dominated by the Dome of the Rock. But will the Temple of Jerusalem be rebuilt? Who is the man of sin in the temple of God? We can talk about that. That's probably going to come up next week.
Okay, yep.
And then, of course, a lot of these questions and maybe the answers to these questions are generated by a whole series of books called Left Behind that were written, 20 years ago, 20-odd years ago. But, I was in a children's library. Well, I was in the Central Library, actually, in Bendigo in Victoria, some 10 years ago. And I was just looking through the children's section of books, and they had 40 volumes of the Left Behind series in the Bendigo Library.
Wow.
I didn't know there were 40 volumes.
I didn't know that. I knew there were a few
Left
in the
Behind
series,
for kids. So what I'm saying is somebody's reading this stuff.
Yeah.
And is that where things are headed? There are a lot of people who believe there's going to be a massive conflict in the Middle East. That'll be the Battle of Armageddon. Israel will once again be God's people, that they're all going to be somehow converted. There are many of these kinds of beliefs that we want to examine from a biblical perspective and see what the Bible has to say. So we're going to go back to the beginning. So in the Bible, for the first couple of thousand years, God is sharing his message of salvation through patriarchs, through people like Adam and Eve's son Abel, then Seth, then people like Enoch who walked with God, people like Methuselah, Noah, and so forth. And you get these people whom God speaks through as prophets or what have you. Then we come to the time of Abraham, where God calls Abraham out of Ur of the Chaldees into the Promised Land. And Abraham and his family, pretty much, for the next couple of thousand years, become the flag bearers for God's message.
Yep.
So you have Abraham, he has a son, his name is Isaac. He has a son whose name is Jacob. And then Jacob has how many children?
Jacob has 12 sons.
12 sons and a daughter.
Yeah.
We always forget the daughter.
We do always forget
When
the
I
daughter,
say
yeah.
how many children, I always pick people.
That's why I said 12 sons.
You did.
I
You
felt
did
like
well.
it was a trick question.
You hadn't finished your sentence, so I got to give you the credit, give you the benefit of the doubt. But he had 12 sons and one daughter, which I think is interesting anyway, because 12 is like a symbolic number for the church, and the one daughter, a woman, is representative of the church too, which is kind of interesting. But Jacob has 13 kids, 12 sons and a daughter. And what happens with Jacob, of course, if people know the story, I'm going to breeze through this. We're going to look at every verse, but we're going to look at some verses in a minute. But Jacob, he's born and he's got a twin brother, Esau. Esau is born first, which gives him the birthright. But Jacob values the birthright more than Esau does. And he's always coveting, if you like, the birthright.
Yep.
He values what it means, but he goes about getting it in the wrong way. And his brother Esau is out hunting. Jacob stayed home. He's made this pot of stew. Jacob comes in and says, "Give me a pot of stew. I'm starving." And Jacob basically said, "I'll give you the pot of stew if you give me the birthright." And Esau,
Seemed like a great deal.
it doesn't keep taking a great deal. But he's so hungry, he said, "Yeah, of course you can have it. Give me the pot of stew." And so he does that. And then when Isaac, their father, is getting very old, his eyesight is failing, he's getting to the he calls his sons to bless them. And Jacob goes in and pretends to be Esau. And he says, "Are you sure it's Esau?" Yes, it's Esau, but it's Jacob, and he blesses him. And then Jacob flees because he's afraid of his brother. And so we're going to pick the story up after the break, but he flees north to his uncle Laban's house, where he ends up serving his uncle Laban for about 20 years. And we'll pick the story up after the break, because I think we're going to go to song.
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't know if this is the direction I thought we'd be heading, because it seems like, we're talking about Israel as a country and stuff.
Yeah.
And it kind of sounds like the formation of Israel through the person Jacob /
We're
Israel.
not finished yet, because
that's
Jacob
right.
becomes Israel.
That's
but we'll
true,
talk
yeah.
about that after the song.
All right, cool. You are listening to A Light in the Dark here on Faith FM live for the first time in a little while, at least, with Peter and Brad. We've got a song coming up now. It is Leanna Crawford with Truth I'm Standing On, featuring Matthew West. We will see you in just a few minutes' time.
Scared. Oh, I thought I knew. Scared. But I'm so filled with fear, I can barely move. Doubt. I've had my share of doubt, but never more than right now. I'm wondering, where are you? Here on the edge of fall apart. Somehow your promises find my troubled heart. And this is the truth I'm standing on. Even when all my strength is gone, you are faithful forever, and I know you'll never let me fall. Right now I'm choosing to believe. Someday soon I'll look back and see all the pain had a purpose. Your plan was perfect all along. This is the truth I'm standing on. Good. I believe you're still good. Even when life's not good, I will not lose this hope that the God who parts the sea promises he's gonna make a way for me. the truth I'm standing on. Even when all my strength is gone, you are faithful forever, and I know you'll never let me fall. Right now I'm choosing to believe. Someday soon I'll look back and see all the pain had a purpose. Your plan was perfect all along. This is the truth I'm standing on.
That was Leanna Crawford featuring Matthew West with Truth I'm Standing On. Welcome back. You're listening to A Light in the Dark here on Faith FM. I'm Brad. I'm here with Peter, and we've been talking a little bit about Israel. We talked a little bit about Israel as a modern state, but we're actually digging back into the Bible, into the Old Testament, to talk about Israel, the person, more so than Israel, the nation. So let's pick that back up, Peter, and
Yeah, for sure.
we'll keep exploring. You know, so far we haven't even heard of a person called Israel.
Right. I think it's important that we dig back into the history so that we understand where does Israel appear.
Yep.
You know, and so far we've talked about Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Jacob as mischievously taken the birthright from his brother Esau, and because of it, he runs away from home, leaves his mother. Leaves his father and runs away from his brother Esau. He heads north towards Laban's place. He meets Rachel there, whom he falls in love with and wants to marry Rachel. And Laban says, "Sure, you work for me for 7 years, and I'll give you Rachel." And he ends up giving him Leah, which is the oldest daughter of Laban. And so he sort of tricks Jacob, which is kind of interesting because Jacob tricked his father in terms of giving him the birthright.
So he got
tricked. Exactly. He found out what it was like to be tricked. And so he ends up with Leah and Rachel, and they start giving him children, and then their maidservants give him children as well, and it's all a bit of a family mess.
Yep.
And then after 20 years of working for Laban, he decides he wants to leave, and he's going to take his family, his livestock and everything with him. And he heads south, and he comes to, let's look at 32, 9 to 11, because it's told to Jacob, Esau, your brother, is coming to see you. And he's worried because he hasn't seen him for 20 years, and Esau wanted to kill him the last time they would have been together. So
right.
What is
Genesis 32.
Yeah, Genesis 32, 9 to 11. I'll get you to read that, please.
Yeah, sure.
Brad.
Then Jacob said, "O God of my father Abraham and God of my father Isaac, the Lord who said to me, 'Return to your country and to your family, and I will deal well with you.' I am not worthy of the least of all the mercies and of all the truth which you have shown your servant. For I crossed over this Jordan with my staff, and now I have become 2 companies. Deliver me, I pray, from the hand of my brother, from the hand of Esau, because I fear him, lest he come and attack me and the mother with the children."
All right. So here Jacob's praying to God. He's heard that Esau he's going to end up meeting Esau, and he's not sure how that's going to go. After all these years, and so he prays to God about it. And then we come down to verse 22. He sends the party on ahead, and in verse 32, they come to the brook Jabbok, which is a place in Israel. It's on the other side of the Jordan, and which I've been to. And he arose that night. You can read this.
Yeah, sure.
There's quite a few verses here. So this is 22 to 28. So maybe you read 3 verses and I'll read 3 verses.
Sure. "And he, Jacob, arose that night and took his 2 wives, his 2 female servants, and his 11 sons, and crossed over the ford of Jabbok. He took them, sent them over the brook, and sent over what he had. And then Jacob was left alone, and a man wrestled with him until the break of day.
Now when he saw that he did not prevail against him, he touched the socket of his hip, and the socket of Jacob's hip was out of joint as he wrestled with him. And he said, 'Let me go, for the day breaks.' But he said, 'I will not let you go unless you bless me.' So he said to him, 'What is your name?' He said, 'Jacob.' And he said, 'Your name shall no longer be called Jacob, but Israel, for you have struggled with God and with men, and have prevailed.'" So here we have the first instance of the word Israel, the name Israel.
Yep.
And it is given by God. So this is not a man-made name. This is a name given by God to this character.
Yep.
And Jacob really means swindler. It means con man, right? Trickster.
Not the nicest
deceiver.
name to have.
Yeah,
Yep.
exactly. And it would sort of went along with the character that he once had.
Mm-hmm. And
And God is saying, you've learned a lesson. I think you've learned a lesson of life,
Yep.
that it doesn't pay to deceive.
Mm.
And he says, I'm going to give you another name, and that name will be Israel, because you have struggled with God and with men and have prevailed. So someone who prevails with God, okay, that is what Israel is. So Israel is a single man at this point,
Yep.
which is Jacob, Israel. And if you read about God's people throughout the Old Testament, you will find them interchanged. Sometimes it'll talk about the children of Jacob. Sometimes it'll talk about the children of Israel, and it'll mention Jacob as a name to cover all of Israel sort of thing. So this is where we pick up Israel. And as we mentioned, Jacob had 12 sons and a daughter, but the 12 sons became the 12 tribes of Israel. Mm-hmm. So there were 12 tribes of Jacob. Now they become the 12 tribes of Israel. And so this is the beginnings of them. And then, interestingly, you remember that one of his sons, Joseph, got sold into slavery by his brothers, went down to Egypt, and eventually became the prime minister, which is another story all in itself. And the Israelites all end up going to stay in the land of Egypt, Jacob included in his, old years. Then we come to the time of Moses. And I want to take a look at Exodus chapter 4, 22 and 23. Exodus chapter 4, 22 and 23.
Yep. It says 22 and 23. Then you shall say to Pharaoh, Thus says the Lord, Israel is my son, my firstborn. So I say to you, let my son go so that he may serve me. But if you refuse to let him go, indeed, I will kill your son, your firstborn.
This is a confrontation between Moses and Pharaoh, and this is God instructing Moses as to what to say to Pharaoh, because he's saying, "I want him to let my people go," and he says, "Thus says the Lord: Israel is my son, my firstborn." That is an interesting phrase in itself. We'll just keep that in mind as we come a little later into the story. Then we get to Exodus 19, where they've come out of Egypt, and I want to get you to read Exodus 19, 5 and 6.
Sure. It says, Now therefore, if you will indeed obey my voice and keep my covenant, then you will be a special treasure to me above all people, for all the earth is mine. And you shall be to me a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. These are the words with which you shall speak to the children of Israel.
All right, so here God is outlining, and there are a number of places where he identifies Israel as his special chosen people. But why did he choose them? This is a question we want to ask, because what happened in the history of Israel, and even sometimes today, people regard Israel, if you like, or Jewish people as God's special people, and they're the only ones.
If you talk to any American evangelical, I think you'd say, yes, Israel is a very special nation and prophesied, and, we have to send lots of money to them to rebuild the temple and et cetera, et cetera.
So what I want to have a look at is Deuteronomy 7, verse 6 to 8, because there's some interesting information here that I think helps us. Why did God choose Israel? Was it because they were smarter, better, nicer people than everybody else?
Yep.
What was it about them? And so Deuteronomy, what did I say? I gave you
7?
Deuteronomy 7, 6 to 8.
For you are a holy people to the Lord your God. The Lord your God has chosen you to be a people for himself, a special treasure above all the peoples on the face of the earth. The Lord did not set his love on you, nor choose you because you were more in number than any other people, for you were the least of all peoples. But because the Lord loves you, and because he would keep the oath which he swore to your fathers, the Lord has brought you out with a mighty hand and redeemed you from the house of bondage, from the hand of Pharaoh king of Egypt.
All right. So there's a number of things here that it mentions that God's chosen Israel for a particular purpose.
Yep.
And that purpose was to share the knowledge of God with the wider world. If you look at where the promised land is, it is the intersection between Europe and Asia and Africa.
Yep.
So all of the trading routes that would go through that part of the world, you had to go through Israel. And so it was God's intention that through that geographical position, they would be able to influence peoples of the world.
Yep.
And I love what it says here in verse 7, where it says, "The Lord did not set his love on you, nor choose you because you were more in number than any other nation, other people, for you were the least of all peoples." And I kind of get the impression that God is saying, if I can do something with you, I can do something with anyone.
Yep.
And I think that's the purpose of him choosing Israel, not because they were smarter, greater, better, more obedient, whatever, but because he was making a statement that if I can do something with a nation of slaves,
That's right. Yep.
right? If I can do something with them, I want to show the world I can do something with them. And so that's, I think, the purpose of that.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And let's throw that as a question out to our listeners as well. Why do you think God chooses to use people, whether they're great or, in the case of Israel here, great or small or powerful or powerless? Very curious to know. So 0488 80831 is the number you can text in and reply to that. Why do you think God uses people? We're going to go to a song now. This is Josh Garrels with In the Garden. You are listening to A Light in the Dark here on Faith FM.
I come to the garden alone while the dew is still on the roses, and the voice I hear falling on my ear, the Son of God is and he walks with me, and he talks with me, and he tells me I am his own, and the joy we share as we tarry there, no mother has ever. Sound of his voice is so sweet, birds hush their singing, and the melody that he gave to me within my heart is ringing, and he has ever known. And the joy we share as we tarry there, no mother has ever.
That was Josh Garrels with In the Garden. You are listening to A Light in the Dark here on Faith FM. And before the break, we threw out the question, why do you think God chooses to use people? Why doesn't he just do it himself? He's the almighty, all-powerful.
Angels, Holy Spirit.
Yep.
There must be better candidates than us.
That's right. And yet, for some reason, he chooses to work through people to deliver his message, which I think is a cool thing. So if you've got an idea on why it is you think that God uses people, feel free to text that in on 0488 808 31. And by the way, we also have a great free offer coming up later today on the show. We're talking about Israel and Bible prophecy and all that sort of thing. And we'd actually love to give you a free copy of what's called the Secrets of Prophecy magazine. Now, this is a really cool magazine. It's 90 pages long. It's got some really gorgeous depictions of, the different beasts and statues and angels and all the prophetic symbols you see in some of the, well, I was going to say the Old Testament books, but in Daniel and Revelation. It's a really cool magazine. And, every time I look through it, I love seeing all of these different depictions and trying to imagine, what on earth it was that Daniel and John were seeing, that this is the only way they could hope to describe it. So make sure you stick around, because we're going to be giving away a code word for that later on the show, and you can text in and get your free copy.
Okay.
So we've been talking about Israel, formerly known as, it's like Prince, the artist,
formerly known.
the
missionary formerly known as
the missionary
Jacob.
formerly known as Jacob. That's right. And he had this situation where he went and he engaged with God, and God gave him a new name. And we just read here before where God was saying, the reason I chose to use Israel as a nation was not because they were the most powerful, influential, beautiful people on the planet. It was like, no. It's because, through working through you, are people who are not necessarily mighty and powerful, and et cetera, et cetera.
Well, exactly the opposite. I mean, he actually mentions in that passage that he delivered them out of the bondage of Egypt, right?
Yep.
And so it's... if we dwell on that point for a moment, it's not our strength, but God's.
Yep.
Paul says, when I am weak, then I am strong. In other words, when I understand that I'm weak, but God is strong, I can lean on him, and that's where my strength comes from.
Yep.
And so I think that that's a powerful message to all of us, that we may seem significant, powerless, weak, untalented, whatever it is, and God can use anybody. And you think about some of the people that God called as individuals too, to serve him through the scriptures. And he will use the most unlikely people.
Yep.
Because it's not about them. It is
That's
about
right.
him.
Yep.
And it's about what he can do with very little, as opposed to what we can do without him. And so I think, again, that even the choosing of Israel demonstrates to me that God is saying, if I can do something with Israel, I can do something with anybody. And that's a good message. It's a powerful, hope-filled message for us today still. Mm-hmm. All right, we are doing a very broad sweep of the history of Israel because we just want to move on to a few things, because we want to understand some things. So Israel, we talked about Moses, the time of Moses, Deuteronomy there. He brings them out of Egypt. They wander in the wilderness for 40 years. Then they enter the promised land. And the children of Israel then start to dwell in the promised land. They build houses and so forth. And then we come to King David, who says, I'm living in a palace and the ark of God is in a tent. And he has a desire to build a temple for God. And God says, well, you won't build the temple, but your son will. And so Solomon builds the first temple, the solid one.
Yep.
And so that is built in around 959 BC. It lasts till 586 BC, when it is destroyed by the Babylonians, who have taken captives people like Daniel to Babylon. And interestingly enough, when Daniel is in Babylon, he receives a prophecy. It's called the 70 Weeks prophecy. And we're not going to dive into all the details of that, but I do want to draw attention to one item, which is, it says 70 weeks are determined for your people and for your holy city. So he's given a message by Angel Gabriel, given a prophecy, the 70 weeks prophecy, and he says 70 weeks are determined for your people. Well, who are Daniel's people? Well, they're the Jews. They've been taken captive to Babylon. 70 weeks to determine for your people and your holy city. Well, what is this holy city? Well, that'll be Jerusalem.
So interestingly, at this point, it's not even necessarily referring to broader Israel.
Right.
Because, by this point in time
It's
in history,
split in two.
What was formerly known as, the Kingdom
land of
of
Israel,
has
yeah.
been split into two kingdoms.
This is a very good point. I'm glad you brought that up.
So you have the Kingdom of Judah in the south.
Yes.
And you had at least the kingdoms of Israel in the north.
Correct.
And by this time, those northern kingdoms had actually been conquered and split up.
Carried away by the Assyrians.
Yep.
That's
so,
right.
in a sense,
Israel is already gone.
Israel's already gone. That's
In a
right.
way, that's true. Or Israel is, even though God will still call his people Israel,
Yep.
the fact is the nation of Israel at that point is fractured and decimated, and there were 10 tribes in the north and only 2 in the south, Judah and Benjamin.
Yep.
And so the 10 have, as you say, have gone. They've been conquered. And so now it's the Jews who have been taken to Babylon. They've also been conquered. And he gets this message. Well, that places a period of time that God is working through Daniel's people, the Jews,
Yep.
and the holy city, Jerusalem. And then, excuse me, the very next verse says, know therefore and understand, this is Daniel 9:25, know therefore and understand that from the going forth of the command to restore and build Jerusalem until the Messiah, the Prince, there'll be 7 weeks and 62 weeks, the street shall be built again and the wall even in troublesome times. And you'll notice that the street will be built again and the wall even in troublesome times. So this is talking about the rebuilding of Jerusalem.
Yep.
When we're talking about questions like, will the temple be rebuilt? We can go back to 500 BC, right?
Yep.
And here we're giving an instruction through Daniel where the prophet is saying, yes, it will be rebuilt. And you know what? It was.
Yep.
It was rebuilt at the time of Zerubbabel.
Yes. That's
Okay,
right.
the second temple it's called. In fact, there's a prophecy that says this second temple will be even more glorious than the first. And those who actually witnessed it, who remember seeing the Solomon's temple and they saw the new one, they said, well, this is not a patch
Yep.
on Solomon's temple in terms of the grandeur and the amount of money that was spent on it. But why was it more glorious? Because Jesus himself would walk in the temple precincts.
Yes.
That's why the second temple was described as being more glorious than the first. But it was rebuilt around 515 BC. It was rebuilt, and that one lasted until 70 AD when it was destroyed by the Romans.
Yep.
That's why if people go to Jerusalem today and they stand up there on the Mount of Olives overlooking the ancient city of Jerusalem, on top of the Temple Mount today is an Islamic shrine, not the temple of God. And so when people talk about, the temple's got to be rebuilt, the temple's got to be rebuilt,
Yep.
it was rebuilt, but it's been destroyed again. The question is another one going to be and based on what? And we're going to have a look at some of those verses today and probably next week more particularly.
Because, I mean, let's face it, if there were to be another temple built, like right now, it would probably cause a pretty cataclysmic war in the Middle East.
It would be a massive political and military problem.
Yep.
And so I don't think it will happen. But what I'm saying is there are enough people in the world, and particularly in the US, who believe it should happen.
Okay,
That means that it could happen. So I'm not going to categorically say it'll never happen. I'm saying it's not necessary. And we'll talk about why. In the future. How much time have we got before the next break?
We've got about 2 minutes.
All right, well, let's talk about something more. So I want to go to a verse in Hosea 11:1 because we're going to shortly move to the New Testament, but I want to take a look at this first. This is Hosea 11 verse 1, and Hosea is in a time of the sort of same time period as Isaiah, really, about 700 BC. But notice what he says in 11:1.
It says, when Israel was a child, I loved him, and out of Egypt I called my son.
All right, that's an important verse because this is obviously God talking about the people of Israel and him calling them out of Egypt, okay? That's the context of what he's saying here. We're going to see after the break how the New Testament writers pick up this verse and apply it to Jesus himself, which is kind of interesting because this verse as we read it here in Hosea 700 BC,
Yep.
God is talking about his people Israel. And then we're going to see what the New Testament does with that after the break.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. You know, like all of these minor prophet books, right, that are in the back half of the Old Testament that a lot of people never read because it's like, oh, who cares?
Yeah,
about
they're
that?
minor.
Yep.
They're
All
only
of
minor
them-
because they're short.
That's right. Yeah, all of them are talking about this rebuilding of the temple, and you know, I think as you say, a lot of that actually ends up pointing to Jesus,
Right.
which is really interesting.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're listening to A Light in the Dark here on Faith FM. Don't go anywhere because after this next song, we're going to give away the code word for today's special free offer. You're not going to want to miss that. It's a great magazine that's all about Bible prophecy. We're going to go to a song now. This is Emily Felt Jones with There's No Way Around the Cross. You are listening to A Light in the Dark here on Faith FM with Brad and Peter.
In the beginning, back when it all began, there was a cross drawn on the master plan and placed in the front of eternity, with salvation symbol for all to see. And there's no way around the cross. All history hangs on that tree, and the shadow falls far and wide and covers humanity. You can choose to ignore, but it won't go away. It's a part of your past, it's your future today, 'cause there's no way around the cross. There's an ending for everything that's done, and heaven designed Calvary just for one. The fate of this world was decided there. The light from the answer shines everywhere, 'cause there's no way around the cross. All history hangs on that tree, and the shadow falls far and wide and covers humanity. You can choose to ignore, but it won't go away. It's a part of your past, it's your future today, 'cause there's no way around the cross. There's no denying the choice we must make, but it stands at the end of whichever road we take, 'cause there's no way around the cross. All history hangs on that tree, and the shadow falls far and wide and covers humanity. We can choose to ignore, but it won't go away. It's a part of our past, it's our future today, 'cause there's no way around the cross. And there's no way around the cross. There's just no way around the cross.
You just heard Emily Felt Jones with There's No Way Around the Cross. Welcome back to A Light in the Dark here on Faith FM. We've been talking about all sorts of stuff to do with Israel today, the history of who Israel was as a person, Israel as a state, Israel as a nation, all of these interesting things. And I'd like to give away our free offer for today now because, you know, I want to make sure we've got as much time as possible to keep talking through this topic because it's a really interesting one, Peter. So if you would like to get your hands on a copy of today's free offer, which is a really cool magazine called The Secrets of Prophecy magazine. It's full of some really gorgeous illustrations that I know I really love. You can text today's code word which is ALD 13, so ALD for a light in the dark, to the number 04 888 808 31. And when you do that, our SMS bot will go through and ask you for some of your details so that we can actually get it to you. And you'll get yourself a great copy of this gorgeous magazine that I know you'll love reading through. So one more time, that's ALD 13 to the number 04 888 808 31. Okay, so Peter, where are we going to land this boat when we're talking about Israel? We just mentioned Egypt. It feels like we've still got so much to cover.
It does. Well, we are going to land in this section with Jesus. And it's a good place to land.
Yep.
And that will give us the springboard for next week's part 2.
Okay, yes.
Because so far we noticed, I mentioned, by the way, it was Haggai 2:9, where it talks about the second temple being having greater glory than the first. And that is because that second temple precinct would be where Jesus would walk. However, remember we had said we'd read in Hosea, I should say, 11:1, out of Egypt I called my son, God had said. And I want you to pick up how the New Testament writers relate to that and some of the other prophecies and things detailed towards Israel and how it applies to Jesus. Yep. So look at Matthew. We're going to look at Matthew 2. And we're going to go to verses 13 to 15. Mm-hmm. And this is the story about Mary and Joseph and baby Jesus. So have a look at those verses.
It says, "Now when they had departed, behold, an angel of the Lord appeared to Joseph in a dream, saying, 'Get up, take the young child and his mother, flee to Egypt, and stay there until I bring you word. For Herod the king will seek to destroy the young child.' When he arose," I'm talking about Joseph, "he took the young child and his mother by night and departed for Egypt, and was there until the death of Herod, that it might be fulfilled which was spoken by the Lord through the prophet, saying, 'Out of Egypt I called my son.'"
Here's an interesting one, isn't it? So here we have, fascinatingly enough, Jesus going into Egypt, and then Jesus coming out of Egypt, and the Bible writer Matthew is saying that it might be fulfilled. It was spoken by the Lord through the prophet, saying, "Out of Egypt I called my son." So he's now referencing that passage in Hosea. And in other words, it's almost implying that Jesus is the epitome of Israel.
Yep.
And so what you have then, if you make a comparison there's some interesting comparison between the history of Israel and what Jesus is playing out in his actual life. Mm-hmm. So, for instance, firstly, we have a man named Joseph having dreams.
Where have we heard of that before?
Back in Genesis, we have a man named Joseph having dreams.
Yep.
That is recorded in Genesis 37:5. And then, of course, we have Matthew 2:13, which we just looked at. Mm-hmm. Then we have Israel and Jesus both led into Egypt, which we've just read about. Mm-hmm. And, of course, they are called out of Egypt. Right? Then what's interesting is when Israel left Egypt, they passed through the Red Sea. And 1 Corinthians chapter 10 picks up this idea and says they were baptized in the Red Sea. Jesus begins his ministry by being baptized. In fact, of course, Israel will eventually, after the 40 years wandering in the wilderness, they will cross the Jordan, which Jesus was baptized in.
Yep.
As well. So that's an interesting one. They wandered in the wilderness for 40 years. Jesus was in the wilderness for 40 days.
40 days, yes.
Which is another interesting allusion to the day-year principle, by the way. But what we have here is Jesus is going over the ground of Israel, the history of Israel, if you like. And so then we have, after the 40 years in the wilderness, Moses writes the book of Deuteronomy.
Yep.
After Jesus' 40 days in the wilderness, he quotes 3 times from the book of Deuteronomy.
Of course, yes.
And then, of course, you've got in Psalm 80, verse 8, we might pick that up. Mm-hmm. Let's have a look at Psalm 80, verse 8.
Yep. It says, "You have brought a vine out of Egypt. You have cast out the nations and planted it."
All right, you have brought a vine out of Egypt, and I'm sure you may recall that Jesus said in John 15, he says, John 15 verse 1, I am the true vine and my Father is the vine dresser. In verse 15, chapter 15 of John verse 5, it says, I am the vine and you are the branches. He who abides in me and I in him bears much fruit, and for without me you can do nothing. So Psalmist is basically talking about, hey, God brought Israel as a vine out of Egypt and planted it in Israel.
Yep.
And Jesus is saying, I am the vine.
Yep.
You know?
Right.
And so I guess Jesus is the epitome of the nation of Israel. If Israel was God's flag bearer from the time of, well, even all of Abraham's family, really, from Abraham forward,
Yep.
they were the flag bearers, then Jesus is sort of coming to say, I'm the fulfillment of all Israel's dreams.
Yep.
You know, reality is that that's what it was. And so what's interesting, of course, when we read about those similarities with Joseph having the dream and going into Egypt and coming out of Egypt and all of those parallels between Israel and Jesus,
Yep.
Israel was overcome, but Jesus overcame.
Yep.
We see time and time again Israel failing and falling and running into problems because they drift away from God, whereas Jesus is the overcomer. And given that the name Israel means one who overcomes with God, that's an appropriate title for Jesus too, because he is the overcomer. He actually lived the perfect life in order to be able to give us a robe of righteousness that carries a perfect record, which I don't deserve.
Yeah,
don't know about you,
yeah.
but I don't deserve that perfect record, but he gives it to us anyway.
Yeah, and for what it's worth, you know, this is, I guess, where sometimes people get caught up in the idea of, oh, well, you know, is it only the Israelites that will be saved and
Right.
that sort of thing? Because, you know, if they are still God's chosen
Yeah.
people, et cetera, et cetera.
Is there a place for me?
That's right. And I guess the reality is, you know, in terms of what you're saying there, is that when it comes down to it, there is nobody that is worthy of
Correct.
being saved. Because
We're all
of-
sinners in need of a saviour.
Yep. So whether you are Jewish, whether you are white, black, Asian, you know, it doesn't matter who your father or mother were or where you grew up or anything like that. It's the sacrifice of Jesus that matters, not anything to do with your background.
There's one verse I think that I'd like, 2 Corinthians 1:20. I just want to look at this here. 2 Corinthians 1 and verse 20. Maybe you could read that, Brad.
Yep, just 1 second. 2 Corinthians 1 verse 20.
Yeah.
I'll just get there. My online Bible doesn't like the word
I'll do it.
Corinthians. You can do it,
I'll
yeah.
do it. It says, for all the promises of God in him are yes, and in him amen, to the glory of God through us. In other words, talking about Jesus, it's saying all the promises of God are yes in Jesus. So all of the cumulative promises made to Israel are fulfilled in the person of Jesus Christ. The New Testament writers saw Jesus Christ as the fulfillment of God's hope for Israel, not national Israel. And that's a
Right.
distinction we need to make. If you'll notice, Jesus time and time again is rebuking the leaders of national Israel
Very true, yes.
because they're misrepresenting what God was really trying to teach.
Yep.
And Jesus comes along and sort of sets the record straight. And we'll pick this theme up again next week because we're going to look at a parable that Jesus spoke, which helps us to understand that the blessing, if you like, was going to be taken away from national Israel and be given to the followers of Christ.
Right, yep.
Because, of course, if Jesus is the epitome of national Israel, then it's him we have to follow, not national Israel.
Yep. And that doesn't necessarily exclude
Jews today.
it doesn't exclude Jews today.
Of course
because
not.
anybody can be a follower of Jesus.
All of the early followers of Jesus were Jews.
They were all Jews living in Jerusalem.
So, yeah,
That's
exactly.
right.
So that's not a problem, you know. But we are not saved by nationality. We are saved by Jesus, and that's the big deal.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, it's a good reminder for all of us today, I think. You know, it's so easy for us to get caught up on this idea of, oh, well, if I'm in the right denomination,
Yeah, right.
or if I believe the right thing, or if I do the certain practice at the certain time, or whatever it is,
Do we have time for another
Yeah,
passage
yeah.
of Scripture?
Absolutely.
Let's look at Matthew 21 and 33.
We've got about 3 minutes left.
That's fine. We'll read this through. Matthew 21, 33 to 45. Maybe I'll read it through,
Sure.
because this sums up, I guess, what Jesus what I'm trying to say. Notice Jesus says here, Matthew 21, 33, "Hear another parable. There was a certain landowner who planted a vineyard and set a hedge around it, dug a wine press in it, and built a tower. And he leased it to vine dressers and went into a far country. Now when vintage time came near, he sent his servants into the vineyard to the vine dressers, that they might receive its fruit. And the vine dressers took his servants, beat one, killed one, and stoned another. Again he sent other servants, more than the first, and they did likewise to them. Then last of all he sent his son to them, saying, They will respect my son. But when the vine dressers saw the son, they said among themselves, This is the heir. Come, let us kill him and seize his inheritance. So they took him and cast him out of the vineyard and killed him. Therefore, when the owner of the vineyard comes, what will he do to those vine dressers? And they said to him," this is the scribes and the Pharisees he's talking to, and he says, "What will they do?" And they said to him, "He'll destroy those wicked men miserably and lease the vineyard to other vine dressers who will render to him the fruits in their seasons." Jesus said to them, "Have you never read the scriptures? The stone which the builders rejected has become the chief cornerstone. This was the Lord's doing, and it is marvelous in our eyes. Therefore I say to you, the kingdom of God will be taken from you and given to a nation bearing fruits of it." And so they understood that he was talking about them. In other words, national Israel was coming towards its end.
Yep.
And the flag was going to pass to spiritual Israel. Well, who is spiritual Israel?
Yep.
Well, we've already seen that Jesus epitomizes Israel.
Yep.
We're going to talk about that next week.
Yeah, and I guess, you can take it from the perspective of, what was the reason that Jacob was given the name Israel? Because he wrestled with God and with men. And I guess, the purpose we can draw out of that is that if you want to be part of this spiritual Israel, well, let's go. Let's engage with God. Let's wrestle with the problems we have with him. Let's engage with him.
Let's plead for God's blessing as Jacob did. He said, "I'm not going to let you go unless you bless me."
Yep.
You want God's blessing.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Peter, it's been a really interesting show today, and I know I'm personally really looking forward to next week.
Part two.
Part two. I always
Israel
love
in prophecy.
That's right. It'll be, well, it's not quite I was going to say The Empire Strikes Back, but because that's definitely the best of the Star Wars films. But anyway, it's been really interesting. And if you would like to get your hands on a free copy of today's free offer, which is a really cool magazine called Secrets of Prophecy, you can get that by texting today's code word, which is ALD13. I see someone's already texted in ALT. No. AL. Sorry, now I've got a cough. ALD13 to the number 0488 808-808-31. Thank you for joining us today on A Light in the Dark, and we will see you again same time next week.